Jason, if you could, uh, let's dig into Russia's economy, right? I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that have been saying for a couple of years now that Russia's on the brink of collapse. Their economy is crumbling. That Putin can't afford his war effort, and yet he continues to. So, could you expand on the problems the Russian economy is having and what the extreme, severe sanctions could do to that economy if, in fact, they get enacted?
So we have to understand that the Russian economy is extremely weak. It has extremely high inflation, and it's not able to sustain itself. Now, what's very interesting at this point is simply that the price of oil has gone down a lot, and if sanctions were to be implemented, what that would mean in real terms is that first, 40% of the Russian national budget is coming from oil and gas. Now, Ukraine is obviously attacking both the oil and the gas industry. And in fact, it's already been able to effectively influence, let's say, almost 20% of all of the oil and gas in Russia. That is, that Russians cannot just trade with it because the Ukrainians are attacking it. More than 20% of all seaborne oil is been affected by Ukraine's attacks. But there's something very important here. These new sanctions, if they were to be implemented, would be namely against the countries who buy Russia's oil and gas. And in fact, it's about 75% of it is bought by India and China. Those two countries right now are in trade negotiations with the United States. They have a key interest in lowering the tariffs on their goods because in both cases, they do about, let's say, 12 to 15% of all their trade with the US. In both cases, they do less than 4% of their trade with Russia. So just if they have to select and pick and choose, it's obviously better to be with the Americans than it is to be with the Russians. So they are undoubtedly using this as a bargaining chip in their current ongoing negotiations with the US. But there's something very interesting about this. Within Russia itself, we see the signs that there's a lot of pressure, not just in the banking sector, or in the markets, or in even the construction industry or in the other industries. What we do see that's fascinating is the amount of fighting that's broken out within the FSB. The FSB, the intelligence service of Russia, is increasingly becoming strained. And how we know that is because we see who they're arresting, we see who they are killing, and we see that there's a lot more stress within them. Now, the FSB is not as much of a massive organization that works in cohesion as one would think. It's in fact quite separated. It has a few different blocks, a few different groups, and they don't really get along. But they all dislike the military. And it seems at this point, they're actively working against their own military, the Russian military, which is a very good sign. More than that, we see that they are arresting more and more people, such as oligarchs, people that own things like gold mines. And the reason is simple. There's simply less pie to split up, to share. And given that the FSB is effectively a mafia, keep in mind Vladimir Putin is career KGB then became the FSB, and he was the director of the FSB in 1999 before he became the leader of Russia. Now, what's fascinating is that there's simply less money. So we see them now, just a couple weeks ago, they took over all the ports in Russia. Historically, that was run by the Minister of Transport, who committed suicide just a couple weeks ago, about 2 hours before he was fired by Putin. The reality is he was killed. But why was he killed? Well, if you're in charge of the ports, you know what's coming in and what's going out, and you can get a percentage. And the FSB now is fighting for control of that. And they're fighting within their own factions about who will control them. There is a lot of problems within Russia, and we see, once again, the external signs. The population of Russia itself is quite placid. However, when we do see signs that there is an interest in politics, it's something like when Prigozhin, who is the head of the Wagner Group, tried to lead his uprising back in 2023. You remember when he got to Rostov, which is a city that's only a couple hundred kilometers from Moscow, he was greeted in the streets by the average Russians. They brought him food, they brought him wine. But there's something even more important that happened. The Russian National Guard didn't stop him. The Russian military didn't stop him. The Russian police didn't stop him. The border guards didn't stop him. Nobody stopped him. The Russian people greeted him. In fact, at that period of time, Dmitry Medvedev, the former president, was silent. Kirill, the head of the Orthodox Church, was silent. The senior leadership of Moscow went totally silent because nobody's quite sure if he was going to take power or not. And in fact, when he got to Rostov, a city that today was attacked by the Ukrainians, and the Southern Command, which is from where they planned the war in Ukraine, when he got there, Prigozhin, the senior officers, the generals, they came out in the street and they drank coffee with him. They could have called an airstrike in on him 2 hours before he got there, but they didn't, because they weren't sure if he would take power or not. The situation within Russia is highly unstable, despite what many people believe. Russia is a very destabilized state, and it won't take much. And for the case of Vladimir Putin, I don't think he fears a red revolution, the people rising up in the streets. It's very unrealistic for a lot of reasons. What he does care about, and what he should be cared about, is that there are people in the senior levels, the oligarchy, who have a lot of power. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of influence, and they have their own private military companies. And each one of them understands that when Putin dies, the oligarchs will be like the 1990s again, killing each other for power and influence. And they will liquidate each other and their families to take their assets. So if you realize that Vladimir Putin's 72 years old, any day that could happen, game theory would indicate the smartest thing you could do is be the one that seizes power yourself. You don't leave this to chance that one day he doesn't wake up. You should be smart and realize the regime is now destabilized. Here's my chance to consolidate my own future. Even if I love Putin, now is my day to secure the future of myself and my family. Because otherwise, it's just idiocy. You're just waiting for a luck of nature until you get liquidated.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment, a really positive, nice, and kind comment. That would be appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily updates.